we are now in a portion entitled The True Affliction. So what is a sinner? You know, in Hebrew, the term for sin, you know, really just means like to miss the mark, right? It's like you don't hit the target. You're off the course. You're not righteous. Righteousness, tzedek, is correct. You hit the mark. But what is the mark? The mark is being in harmony with your true essence, the true spiritual purpose of who we are as a people. And that's reflected in your ability to align with the laws and commandments and principles of the Most High. It's to align with the standards that the Most High puts on earth. That's the mark, the divine protocol, the structure of righteousness and what it is. And Moshe gave us insight into what that mark is through the Torah. The prophets then expounded upon it in various ways. Yeshua reclarified it in his generation. Ben-Ami made it plain again to us now. But there's a mark of righteous character, a standard of righteous behavior that we should all be harmonizing with. But a sinner is one who has strayed from his true essence. That's different than simply saying a sinner is somebody who's breaking a rule, because the breaking of the rule indicates a straying away from your true essence, which is the source of your life and your being. Having strayed, he is considered lost and is commanded to abandon the path that alienated him from Yah. This applies to all of us, right? All of us as individuals, including myself. When we stray off the path and turn away from our true essence, away from our source of life and being, we're spiritually lost. And the only message that's relevant for us at that time is to abandon the path that we're on as we're lost. It's to stop and turn around and find where we made the wrong turn. All things that are done during this alienation from Yah have to be classified as misdeeds or incorrect. You don't justify and rationalize, right? It's not that bad. I just worshiped a little bit of Baal. I just prayed to Zeus on the weekends. You know what I mean? All things done during this alienation from Yah must be classified as misdeeds. It was only a little bit of adultery. I only sprinkled a little idolatry in, you know, after work. But other than that, I was mostly good. I ain't kill that many people. I ain't steal that much stuff. I ain't disrespect my parents that bad. All things, misdeeds. And then upon your return, you must regret that you ever treaded upon the evil way. You must show no sign of pleasure with what you did or received upon that path. And man, it sure was nice when I was out there killing people. Like it sure was, or on a more practical level, the type of things that we actually do. Because what Yah is doing is he's listening for a language of repentance. And if the language is things were so much better when I was unrighteous and I can't stand the fact that I'm righteous now, then that's not genuine repentance. That's going to block the atonement. So you must show no sign of pleasure with what he did or received upon that path. Every thought of what you did must be like an affliction of your soul. You must feel pain in your heart and soul for your misdeeds, loathe even the very thought of them. True atonement requires that you afflict your soul. If your past sins or mistakes do not grieve your soul, then you have not made atonement. The true meaning of the things which were done has to be confessed. They were evil. You no longer see them as light, but blight in your relationship with the eternal. Because he is a jealous God, not tolerating excuses for your continued existence under Satan, or you're relating to it as a good life. So when you go into Leviticus 16 and 16 and you look at the basic outline of the principles of Yom Kippur, you see that it was fundamentally all about the ideal of atonement. And this atonement is between the people and the Most High. And the spiritual institution of it was the priest causing the atonement for the nation as a whole. But on a practical level in people's daily lives, there's a need for them to be able to atone with each other. Right? Because as was mentioned before, simply saying that Yah has blessed us and he accepts us and we're no longer worrying about all the sins of our past, but we're going to continue doing the same wrong things towards each other isn't the idea. Remember Leviticus 19, you know, not tale-bearing, not holding grudges, rebuking each other, correcting your brother or your sister, iron sharpens iron. All those spiritual principles tie into the eternal idea of Yom Kippur. And for a very penetrating analysis, a good reference to study in your personal time is Isaiah chapter 58, verses 1 through 14. And when you look at Isaiah chapter 58, verses 1 through 14, the prophet speaks about the importance of what I refer to as rising above religious tradition. And he specifically speaks about how people fast, but not for the right reasons. right? They fast, but for strife and debate. They fast to win arguments. They align with holy days in order to prove that other people aren't aligning with the right holy days. You know, they're doing all these different things, all these external things to give a demonstration of righteousness, to give the appearance that they're keeping the Torah, but their hearts ain't right. And then the prophet Isaiah really points to the fact that it's really about the alignment of the heart, to the point where Yah is less concerned about the maintenance of the tradition compared to the alignment of the heart. Even go so far as say, I don't even want your tradition. I don't want your sacrifice. I don't want your new moons. I don't want your festivals. This is also backed up in Isaiah chapter 1 and in Micah chapter 6, all throughout the words of the prophets, right? You find reference to the fact that the religious traditions were supposed to be vehicles that inspire spiritual transformation, vehicles that inspire transformation of the heart, like containers of divine ideals that we can internalize and apply to change our situation. But what people tend to sink into is just following tradition for the sake of following tradition, no longer accessing the wisdom of it, no longer tying into the spiritual principles of it. And in that situation, what actually happens is the religious traditions, or even the spiritual traditions. Isaiah wasn't talking about Christmas and Easter. That wasn't out yet. Isaiah wasn't talking about Halloween. He wasn't talking about St. Patrick's Day. He was talking about principles and laws and traditions from the Torah. And that the people had converted the Torah into a mere religious tradition that can be used to satiate their egos and their desires to appear right and their desire to win arguments and debates, instead of doing the work of liberating the people from oppression, doing the work of looking after those who are oppressed, those who are experiencing injustice, taking care of the needy. You see what I mean? Taking care of yourself by applying the principles of the Shabbat. Like, all of that is much more than just, oh, Yom Kippur coming around, let me do this, this, and that. You see what I mean? And so there's that emphasis in the scriptures. And one way to think of it is, imagine being hungry and somebody gives you the banana peel instead of the banana. Or being thirsty in the desert and you get a bottle of water with no water in it. All you have is the empty container. That's what religion is without true spirituality. That's what culture is without true spirituality. You know? It's like being thirsty in the desert with a bottle of water that's glued shut. And people are grabbing the Bible, which is a beautiful bottle of tasty, delicious, regenerative water, but it's glued shut. And all they do is they just lick the edges of the bottle that have the little pictures of water on it. And they're not actually satiated by that. They're not actually satisfied with that. You know? And so that concept of the water in the container versus the structure that the water is in is like the traditions of the Torah versus the actual wisdom and spiritual meaning contained therein. And what Ben Ami has done is help to unlock and reveal and share the wisdom of the meanings inside the Torah, right? Same thing Yeshua was doing, same thing Isaiah was doing. So we don't get caught up in just the traditionalism or the ritualism of it, which is also significant, right? But it's not the eternal idea. That's not the part that causes the transformation. And so as we're going through this section, the wisdom pertaining to the subject of atonement and repentance is what's being explored. Now, moving along, we see the importance in section 2b of reappraising the past. Reappraising the past. So it's clear, the things that have been committed, the things that were done against the laws and commandments of Yah are done. They cannot be called back. I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes, we've all made mistakes. The things that we did, they can't be called back. We don't got no time machine. Go back before that day, undo the thing that was did, right? So we can't change that. But what can we change? The meaning of those things. The meaning of those things can and must change. So what does he mean by the meaning of it, right? If I sin willfully and I define that sinful behavior as a decent thing to do, or an understandable thing considering the circumstances, or something that you would do if you was in my shoes, right? If I'm rationalizing it and I'm giving it the meaning of something that is acceptable or permissible, then what happens is I hold on to it. I protect that thought so that it can produce fruit later on. I preserve and nurture that seed so it can yield later on. But when I reinterpret the meaning of it, when I redefine what that behavior was, oh, you know, that was actually wicked. That was ungodly. That wasn't right. Now that same seed wants to re-emerge later on, but I've redefined what it is. I don't want to do that anymore. It's unacceptable. And so you create a standard for righteousness where the wickedness can't pop up and manifest. So in commencing the process of your new birth, you will have to reappraise your past being. You have to reappraise. Now, you know what an appraisal is. You know, you go, you get a watch or some diamonds or something like that. You want to see how much it's worth. You give it a level of value and worth. You say, this is worth $100. This is worth $500. And then you say, well, wait a second. It's actually fake. You know, you take something like the baseball that Babe Ruth hit for his final home run, or the basketball that was Michael Jordan's last dunk. You can sell that on eBay for $1 million. Like, people buy that stuff for ridiculous amounts of money because of how it's appraised. It's appraised as something of high worth. But then when you find out that actually isn't the basketball that was Michael Jordan's last dunk, that actually isn't the baseball that was Babe Ruth's last hit, that isn't the pants that Elvis wore, or whatever the little thing is, there's a reappraisal. It's worthless. You see what I mean? It's how much the basketballs cost, $2.99 if they're used, 42 cents from China. All right, done. Right? You took a whole lot of commas and zeros off of that price tag. So a reappraisal, the thing is the same thing that it was, but the meaning of it has changed. The value of it has changed. So Ben-Ami says here, in order to actually experience a new birth, you will have to reappraise your past being. Who you were when you did the thing has to be reappraised. And if you're in the state of mind that, no, I was a perfectly normal person when I was out there, if you were normal and you did that and you're defining that as normal, why should I believe that you're not going to do the same thing anymore? The correct explanation is I was tripping. I was discombobulated. Like, I don't know what was going on with me. I was clearly affected by a number of different things. I was stressed out. I was this. I was spiritually not secure. Then you start looking at your checklist. Were you praying? Were you meditating? What kind of conversations were you having? What kind of music were you listening to? What kind of media were you consuming? Right? Were you studying the scriptures? Were you into the word? Were you studying the Torah? Were you associating with others who do the same? Were you fueling the righteousness inside of you or fueling the wickedness inside of you? Because that would make sense if you were doing bad things and you didn't have the life support system that structures goodness for you. It makes sense that you did those things. So reappraising the meaning is an important part of the spiritual new birth. We read here that if your past is not properly dealt with, it will have a debilitating effect. One moment. Debilitate, definition. To make someone weak and infirm, to hinder, delay, or weaken. To make something physically weak or to impair the strength of it. So if your past is not properly dealt with, you will be weakened by the fact that you haven't properly evaluated your own past. So you can see how this ties into principles of psychology and mental health. Before the Western systems of psychology emerged, this was our paradigm for understanding mental health. And the idea that there's some things from your past, negative events, negative affairs, negative occurrences that are carrying with you. And as they're carrying with you, they're affecting your present. This is what the idea of curses is. And these curses are manifesting themselves in your lives in a variety of ways. And if you don't properly deal with your past, it will have a negative effect. Whether that's you as an individual, your past of what you've done, whether it's you as a family, you as an institution or an organization, as a community or as a nation, the effects that you're experiencing in the present moment, the current outcomes that you're experiencing are based on things that happened in your past. We have to reevaluate them. If you don't reevaluate your past, the cleansing will not be thorough enough. You'll leave some dirty areas that you may have felt were not in need of cleansing, but will certainly cause problems later. Your complete dedication to Yah cannot and will not be manifest. You will in turn influence others to do evil, giving the subtle impression that some good has been or can be accomplished by turning aside or straying from Yah. Mm-hmm. This concept of this spiritual cleansing from the inside out requires this reevaluation of our past, and quite often our pride and our ego prevents us from doing that. We don't want to consider the extent to which past issues pertaining to our relationships with our parents, for example, issues pertaining to previous sexual relationships, issues pertaining to previous psychological or religious influences in our lives, things pertaining to past mistakes that we made that we've never overcome. All of that influences the present moment. And by allowing for it to influence the present moment and seeing how our disobedience to the laws and commandments of Yah has caused these outcomes, what actually happens is we become vehicles for the dissemination of deception. And that's what you read about in Genesis chapter 3. Eve became a willful participant in the process of deceiving others. It's not just that she was deceived, it's that she is now a vessel through which deception could flow. And that's what happens. She was convinced. In Genesis chapter 3, the serpent began boasting about the benefits of unrighteousness while downplaying the significance of sin. Because he said, you shall not surely die. Downplaying the significance of sin, downplaying the consequences of sin, but boasting about the benefits of unrighteousness. God does know that in the day that you eat thereof, you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So he made unrighteousness appear attractive. He made righteousness appear unattractive. Eve bought into it, then presented the same rationale to someone else. And we can become that. It's not gender-based. We all can become that agent or that vehicle for the dissemination of deception when we're infected by it. And so that internal cleansing is a serious thing.